Hey everyone, this is Dan, here with a new TouchDesigner component release. This one is called ResetPLS. It's a free utility component that's going to be available in a bunch of places, including my Patreon. Please consider joining if you like my stuff. But in a sense, it's going to look for all the operator types that are enabled in its parameter list. So in this case, I have a bunch of LFOs, speeds, whatever, counts, yeah. And instead of dragging this keyboard into all of the ResetPLS parameters here, because I don't like doing that, instead of that, I can just pulse this reset here, or simply click this, and it's gonna reset everything back to its initial value. I've tried to list all the operator types that have some sort of a reset. So for example, of course, feedback top. I have some feedback here and on the end, and I don't need to drag this onto there. I can just pause this thing. I'm gonna talk a bit about all the parameters here, the config parameters mainly, but there's a readme that you can just read and skip this video. And then later I'm gonna go to the innards of this component and talk a bit about the code itself. So starting with the conf parameter page, you can specify the root of this component. So by default it's the parent of this component, meaning where it's placed. You can have another root if you want. You can limit the depth of the search. So if it's 1, it's gonna only look on this level. If it's enabled, so for example, if there's something inside the base here, it's not gonna reset this LFO because we've limited the search. You can specify exceptions. So if I write speed 2 to 4 here, these are not going to be reset. I can also add LFO 1, which is just below. Now this is not being reset. Great. I can also drag a operator here. And what else? The exceptions limit toggle. So let's specify base 1 as an exception. So it won't be reset. I'm gonna talk a bit about custom parameters and how they are dealt with, but basically if we limit by the exceptions, it's gonna stop looking for operators if it faces an exception. So base 1 is an exception. Inside there's an LFO. If I'm now pulsing the reset, but it's not being, this LFO is not being reset because we are stopping here. I hope that's clear. Then there's the enable and disable operator types pulses. So if I enable all, everything is gonna be on. I can disable everything, and I can also undo these operations. That's, yeah, and of course there's the reset pulse. That is the main feature. And then each operator family have their own parameter page. This is gonna be important later on when I'm talking about the code. And under you have all the operator types listed that have reset or reset pulse parameters. In the case of DATs, it's going to be clear parameter that it's going to pulse. So these DATs have a clear instead of a reset. And then in the case of comps, it gets a bit more tricky because it can vary. So for example, I thought resetting, for example, the NVIDIA Flex solver would be useful, and in that case, the start sim is being paused. In the case of what else is here? Replicators is another example. Recreate all operators is going to be paused. And in the case of base, container, geometry, and also all of these, you can specify custom parameters in the parameter list. So by default, it's going to look for reset and ResetPLS parameters. So these in every base, container, geometry, and also these. But you can specify your own custom reset parameter under the MISC tab. So if I now go into here, edit custom reset pars, I can add more. So for example, this base component, let's say there is my reset parameter as well. And in principle, it should print this message. That's the functionality of this base component right now. And in fact, it has all three of these. So if I now, I think it's an exception. Yeah, because it was an exception and nothing was happening. But if I now reset this base one component, it's gonna pause all these three because all these parameters are listed as a custom reset parameter. Also important to note regarding the custom reset pars is that, for example, the script top, chop, subdets can also have custom parameters. So I'm just gonna quickly put this down. You can customize this operator and add a reset here as well. And if the script is enabled here, it's gonna pause this reset of the script operators. Yeah, MISC tab. You can reset or not reset the timeline. There's a custom script that you can enable, and you can edit this custom script to whatever you want. So now, because it's enabled, it should write this yay here, yes. And lastly, there's the static exceptions. So I found that some, for example, the color level picker, which I think is beloved by a lot of people, if you have the cache top enabled, and if it's not an exception, it's gonna mess up the color level picker. So just to show you, if I edit this the static exceptions list and remove color level picker from here, because of the cache tops, it's gonna mess up this component. So that's why I added it to the static exceptions list. And if you edit these two tables, you will need to resave your component either in your palette or externally. Otherwise, it doesn't save with the component. And I think that's about it. Next, we go into the code. So I don't think I'm gonna talk too much about this component. I'm just gonna show you the main pieces and how they are utilized. So we have an opfind operator here. That's the heart of all this. And we have all the enabled types listed here. and these types come from a table, this table op types, which is populated by a script, and these strings are then constructed from the parameters, the names of the parameters, and also the parameter page that they reside in. So for example, if I enable a spring sop, it's going to be added to this table, and it's gonna look for the parameter name, make it lowercase, and concatenate the parameter page string to it. So that's how you get spring sop in here. Here in the code, you can see we are grabbing the page name of the parameter that is being changed, being enabled, and the lower case. After that, we add the operator family, and we append this to another row in the table. There are some operator types that are similar between the names are similar or shared between operator families. For example, all of them are listed here in the similar op types dictionary. So we have feedback for chops and tops. You have script for all operator families. So in case of those, I just listed them and just constructed the string manually, the operator type manually, in that case, coming from the parameter name. So just to show you the trail, for example, trail is called trail sop, and there's a trail chop, and this one is called trail chop. Otherwise, chop or sop or anything is not present in the parameter names. And that's how it is resolved here. If parameter in similar op types, then we just take the value and append that to the operator types. So in this way, I didn't have to write too much, and I just had to populate the this component with all the pages, and then add these toggles. So that's the table op types. Next, I want to talk about the exceptions. So here we are grabbing the exception parameter and converting each string. So if I add LFO1 here into a table, and then there's a small script that basically appends the root, which is the same root as the opfinds root. So it's going to append this string and also this little hat, because it means later on in the exceptions that these are exceptions. And then if exceptions limit is enabled, it also automatically adds a dash and then asterisk. Yeah, I always messed it up. After this string, just in case it's if it's a base component, then we limit in this way. So this is the script except. Yeah, it's pretty simple code, I would say. Then we have the static exceptions being merged into one single table, and then this is converted to a simple string, and then this string is then fed into this select, and we are selecting everything but whatever is matching these strings. So that's how we weed out the exceptions from the op find. And then I think what's really left is the resetting itself. So we have this null to reset table in the end after the exceptions that contains all the types and the paths of what should be reset or what is going to be, yeah, what we're going to try and reset. And when this pause button is hit or the parameter reset is paused, then this script runs here. It's going to look at all the rows of this table one by one, and it's going to look at the op types. So if going one by one, if the operator type is a dat and not script dat, it's going to pause the clear. For replicator comp, it's going to pause recreate all. For audio filing and movie filing, it's going to queue pulse. It's going to pause the queue pulse. For actor comp, it's this update CS pulse. For timer chop, flex solver, blood solver, flow, it's going to pause the start. And the default case, if it's not a customable, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, in the default case, it's going to reset the reset pulse. This is the most common parameter we're going to pause. And then the customables, the base comp, container comp, geometry comp, and the script OPs. So if you want to add, for example, the camera comp, you add this to the customables and then customize the component, add a camera toggle here, and then you should be fine to have your own camera comp and add a reset pulse. For example, if you wanted for some reason to have a reset pulse for a camera, you would do this. So yeah, it's gonna look, if the operator type is in the customables, then it's gonna look for all the reset parameters that are listed in the table of the custom reset parameters and try and reset those parameters or pause those reset parameters. Then we have the timeline reset here and the custom script, and that's about it. It's pretty simple code all in all. I think it's pretty optimized as well. I try to do my best. Yeah, also the enable and disable all button handling here. What's really important here is the undo, which I just learned. So basically you add this UI.undo.start block. You have to add a name and then whatever. So we just enable or disable all the parameters and close it with a UI.undo.endBlock, and that's it. You have undo. And then in the case of limit depth, if limit depth is off, then the depth slider is disabled. So this is handled in this little script. So yeah, that's about the code, I think. All right, that's it. I hope you will end up using this component. I have this literally in all of my projects because I hate dragging this keyboard in all around. I like to have it just on this component, and I can deal with everything with the parameters here. Yeah, again, there's the README if you ever get stuck, but feel free to ask any questions if you even have a question about code or whatever. And I'm gonna put all the download links in the description below, and also my Patreon. Please consider joining if you like my stuff and if you want some more extra content. And take care, see you around.